They have given us the approval for Cross Lake residents to return home that are healthy.
Tonight, heavy rains bring good news to fire evacuees in northern Manitoba.
That, we're fighting over who's going to sit where. We're not fighting over issues of poverty, boil water advisory, youth suicides, flooding out of communities. These are some real pivotal issues in the past the Assembly's dealt with, and it just can't do so.
Who's really affected by internal strife at the AFN? Our Truth in Politics panel breaks it down.
You can think of sexual assault centers as a very specific, highly skilled and competent organization.
And there is a growing need for sexual violence services in the North. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. There's some relief for Pimicikamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba as rain is easing the threat of wildfire reaching the community. It was a chaotic and frightening night as Chief and Council issued an evacuation order for the 7,000 people who live there. APTN's Leanne Sanders has this update.
The order came around 9 p.m., giving people just 3 hours to evacuate. The wildfire had been burning south of Cross Lake, 550 kilometers north of Winnipeg, since last week, but it jumped the river, and there were fears the only highway out would be impassable. This afternoon, Chief David Monias posted a welcome update on Facebook.
We had heavy rainfall last night and this morning, and it put out the fire. Not completely out, but it's still smoldering. We see some smoke in some areas.
And Monias says they got welcome news from the government as well today.
And they have given us the approval for Cross Lake residents to return home that are healthy.
Monias urged people with breathing issues such as asthma or COPD and elders who had found accommodations elsewhere to rest up and not return in case there were flare-ups. According to the Manitoba Wildfire Service, the wildfire danger in central and eastern Manitoba is high to extreme and low to moderate across northern Manitoba. There are 9 active wildfires currently burning in the province. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The federal government made a $12 million announcement today. It's to help the Akwesasne Mohawk Territory to fight organized crime. The funding comes on the heels of the deaths of 8 migrants in the St. Lawrence River earlier this year. They were part of a human smuggling operation. APTN's Fraser Needham reports.
At a press conference at the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Station, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino said the investment will give police the tools they need to curb the flow of illegal contraband and human smuggling.
Over the next 5 years, federal support will continue to enhance the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Services capacity to investigate and disrupt organized crime, strengthen the coordination of enforcement efforts across jurisdictions, equip officers and additional tools and training, and raise awareness among young people who are at risk in the community about the potential pitfalls of criminal involvement.
Akwesasne Police Chief Sean DeLude said the force plans to hire more officers and buy more cameras and drones for surveillance.
And on a move-forward basis, these additional sums are just going to permit us to reach better heights, greater numbers in terms of police officers, and what we can fill in terms of human beings in the uniforms. We're going to utilize the sums to buy technology to permit us to advance forward in a more efficient and better manner in combat crime.
In late March, the bodies of 8 Indian and Romanian migrants were pulled from the St. Lawrence River. Police say they were part of an unsuccessful attempt to cross illegally into the United States by boat. DeLude declined to comment further on the ongoing investigation.
Rest assured that what is being done or what needs to be done internationally is being done by our partnering agencies, such as the RCMP, and what needs to be done locally or within the region is being done through AMPS and our neighboring partner agencies.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Akwesasne Mohawk Territory.
A new survey on access to services for Indigenous victims and survivors in rural and northern communities says demand is increasing. Over 100 sexual violence organizations were asked to report on demand for their services. Ending Violence Association of Canada surveyed the groups and found 83% of them had increased or consistently high demands for sexual violence support services as compared to pre-pandemic levels. 76% of the organizations reported increased or consistently high wait times, resulting in even longer delays to services than before COVID-19. Yukon Status of Women Council Executive Director Asia Mason says this issue is even more profound in the Northern Territories, where there are no designated sexual assault centers.
You can think of sexual assault centers as a very specific, highly skilled and competent organization that helps to respond to somebody who's in crisis and can help them navigate the systems so that the outcomes of a potential investigation are in the best interest of that individual who experienced the assault. We don't have those spaces in the North.
According to Statistics Canada, close to half of Indigenous women in Canada have experienced sexual assault in their lifetime, compared to 30% for non-Indigenous women. The Nunavut Legislative Assembly opened up yesterday for the spring sitting. Iqaluit Singna MLA Janet Brewster gave an emotional tribute to her son, Jaco Lyle Ritchie, who died by suicide on March 13th. It's a widespread issue in the territory. Here's part of her speech.
Mr. Speaker, like many of us, he made big mistakes that may have felt insurmountable in the moments and years as he grew into adulthood. And he sometimes very publicly owned up to those mistakes, focusing on what he cared about, uplifting targets of abuse, especially women. Though for a time, he so bravely admitted that he was part of the problem.
Emotional stuff. If you happen to be in a New York restaurant and order lobster, as many of us I'm sure have been, it might be a Mi'kmaq who caught it under their right to earn a moderate livelihood. Angel Moore explains.
3 lifelong friends have established a trade route to bring Mi'kmaq caught lobster to American customers. Called Five Tribe Seafoods, Derek Sock and Nolan Augustine of the Elsipogtog First Nation in New Brunswick formed the company so that harvesters can get a fair price for their catch.
You know, we fished for over 20 years, and then we've seen it, like, you know, the non-native fishermen will get a much better deal than us.
Five Tribe Seafoods is named after Wabanaki Confederacy, the Mi'kmaq, the Wolastoqey, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and Abenaki nations. It will transfer moderate livelihood lobster from the ocean to the table.
I think we have to cater to our brothers and sisters, you know, and we have to try to keep it in-house, I guess, so to speak, from the beginning to the end.
The company has already had one successful run. A couple of weeks ago, it transported 1 ton, about 1,500 lobsters, from Nova Scotia to Brooklyn, New York, with the help of friend Brian Stevenson of Philadelphia. He connected Five Tribe Seafoods with American seafood distributor, the Brooklyn Lobster Company, so Mi'kmaq lobster are available in New York restaurants.
It seems history has dictated that they kind of isolated Mi'kmaq fishermen, not just from Canadian and U.S. markets, but international markets, and that's what we're striving for, to alleviate that.
Five Tribe Seafoods hopes to export up to 5,000 pounds of lobster a day to Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and New Jersey, and eventually the entire U.S. market.
Well, this operation is more like a mom and pop operation, and it's catering to like United States mom and pop, and they're bigger mama and papas over there.
Five Tribe Seafoods is projected to purchase moderate livelihood lobster from fishermen from all the Wabanaki nations. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Tubuktuk, also known as Halifax.
Coming up after the break, our Truth and Politics panel will dig into the internal strife at the Assembly of First Nations. Stick around. Welcome back. Well, as we reported yesterday, a summary report of an investigation into Assembly of First Nations National Chief Roseanne Archibald is in the hands of some. According to the report, she was found to have harassed 2 of the 5 people who complained, and all of their privacy was breached and reprisal was found in their cases. With all the internal strife at the AFN, how much of it matters to the regular person outside of political circles? We're joined by journalists Carrie Benjo and columnist Niigaan Sinclair to discuss. Carrie, Niigaan, great to have you with us. Niigaan, we'll start with you. How does the internal strife at the Assembly of First Nations affect, the average First Nations person?
Since the very beginning, almost since Roseanne Archibald was voted in, democratically, I might point out, that it's been just nothing but strife, and it's virtually brought the work of the Assembly to a standstill. They've been able to get small resolutions passed, mostly on murder, missing Indigenous women and girls, LGBTQ, Two-Spirit peoples. But for the most part, the work of the Assembly has stopped because we constantly are in this cycle of fights over leadership and governance. Has become so petty, in fact, that when when the last leadership review happened last summer, there was a real fight of who's going to sit on stage and who's going to sit in the spot of the national chief. The regional chiefs were like, no, absolutely, we get this spot. And the national chief came on stage to much attention. So the point is that, they're fighting over like who's going to sit where. We're not fighting over issues of poverty, boil water advisory, youth suicides, flooding out of communities. These are some real pivotal issues in the past the Assembly's dealt with, and it just can't do so.
And as Niigaan points out there, Kerry, this is all gonna happen again in the next 2 months. Another leadership review, an AGA coming up in Halifax. Why do you think that this matters to the outside, to people outside of the few that are involved?
I think this is really important because it speaks to a broader issue. The AFN is the national body that is supposed to be speaking on behalf of all First Nations people. And like Niigaan said, there's a lot of issues still facing Indigenous people today. And when we have our national body unable to provide that collective voice, it creates this situation where there's a lack of confidence, and we have First Nations that are now separating. They're deciding to go out on their own because they feel that AFN, other tribal councils, regional bodies aren't speaking on their behalf. They feel that maybe they're better off on their own. They are looking at other ways to amplify their voices and get their issues out there because the voice that's supposed to be theirs is not providing. They're not producing results.
Kerry, the AFN's not talking, the national chief's not talking, but when you look online, Kerry, there's a lot of comments about, this wouldn't be happening if it weren't for the fact that Roseanne Archibald was the first woman to lead the AFN. Do you think that there's something to that?
Definitely. Like, the AFN was created in 1982. Roseanne Archibald was the first female chief, and since she started, there has been a lot of internal strife, people not wanting to take her lead. She's saying, okay, we need to do this. She ran on transparency and she's trying to do that, and now there's so much coming back on her. Her leadership is constantly questioned, and I really have to wonder if it was a male in that position, if he took the same stance Roseanne is, would he be called, strong, a visionary, somebody that is accountable to the people. But no, she's being called a bully, and all these terms that are designed to undermine her leadership. I think there is a real old boys club that is still in effect here, especially in Indigenous politics. I see it among female chiefs. They are still fighting for their space. They preach about equality, but when it comes to sharing space, there really is a lack of wanting to give up the opportunity for the female voice. We bring a lot to the conversation, and she deserves a chance to speak and do what she needs to do in this position.
Niigaan, the AFN isn't the only organization out there having issues. The Métis National Council's having its issues. The Métis Nation of Ontario versus numerous First Nations in that province. What's happening here, and what do you think the impact is?
Not to mention the Native Women's Association, which there's been trouble brewing for quite a long time. Here's the challenge: is that anyone on any First Nations knows that there is a great deal of politics. Some of it's very petty, some of it's very legitimate. I mean, we're talking about issues of bullying, harassment. I mean, these are not light words that the independent research body or the independent investigator has alleged around the national chief. Now, we don't know all of that information. There's more information to come, but I absolutely agree with Kerry that this is something that certainly gender and power has to come into the conversation, because there are certain things that are being alleged about the national chief that seems to be indicative of many organizations, but yet seems to be now a reason to remove her. The fact is that Roseanne Archibald was voted in democratically, and you either believe in democracy or you don't. And the fact is that these charges, we don't know the ins and outs of them. They've been permeating for quite a long time, but almost from the very first moment when Roseanne Archibald came in, she has alleged, even during the election campaign, that there has been financial impropriety. There's been certain nepotism, a kind of a family hiring family, stuff that we see in band politics all the time. And so for her to come in and clean this up, it's going to involve breaking a lot of eggshells. It's going to involve talking about people very publicly, not in terms of referring that as retribution, but talking about it openly. And the fact that the Assembly continually is putting the attention on her as the bully, but not on the investigation, which seems to be quite evident that there is a great deal of impropriety. There's a lot of smoke. Certainly there would be a lot of fire if there is a lot of smoke. That should be where the attention is, as much, if not more so, than talking about the ways in which Roseanne Archibald's trying to handle this issue.
Carrie and Egon, I'm sure this won't be the last time we discuss this issue. Thanks to you both for taking some time.
Miigwech, thanks so much.
Okay, time for another break, and then we have previews of the season finales of Nation to Nation and APTN Investigates. Stay with us. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And if you're in Carcross, Yukon, you can maybe feed some llamas. That's what our very own Sarah Connors was doing this past weekend, enjoying what looks like a beautiful day. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca. You might just be our photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, showers and 12 in Fredericton, 1 degree warmer with rain in Halifax, 11 and rain for Kuujjuaq, cloudy and 7 for Nain, sunny and 21 in Montreal, 22 for Val-d'Or, sun's out and 22 for Sault Ste. Marie and North Bay, sunny and 22 in Thunder Bay, 27 is the high for Sioux Lookout. Cloudy and 3 in Churchill, 14 with showers for Thompson. 32 under sunny skies in Winnipeg. 29 with rain in Dauphin. Showers and 18 for Regina. Sunny and 22 in North Battleford. 21 in Meadow Lake, 20 for La Ronge. Sunny across most of northern Alberta. 21 in Fort Chip, 24 for High Level. Sunny and 22 in Edmonton, rain and 21 in Lethbridge. 23 for Vancouver and Victoria, 26 in Kamloops. 25 for Prince George, rain and 18 in Smithers. +5 in Old Crow, 13 for Whitehorse. 20 in Yellowknife, cloudy and 16 in Norman Wells. -3 for Sax Harbor, 7 above in Paulatuck. +3 in Chesterfield, -4 in Cambridge Bay. Snow and 4 below for Resolute, -1 with a chance of snow in Iqaluit. Over to our Ottawa studio now. That's where Annette Francis is standing by to tell us who is on the last episode of the season of Nation to Nation.
After the news, catch our final episode of the season on Nation to Nation. We'll hear from well-known columnist Doug Cuthand. We get his thoughts on the numbered treaties in the West, the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the RCMP after 150 years. Veldon Coburn is a professor from the University of Ottawa. He rates how well the federal government did this year when dealing with Indigenous issues. And finally, I speak to the chief of the Eskasoni First Nation about a verbal agreement to bring peace on Cape Breton waters over lobster harvesting. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Good stuff, Annette. Thanks. False claims of Indigenous identity have made headlines across the country in recent years. Tomorrow night on the season finale of APTN Investigates, journalist Rob Smith looks into allegations of so-called pretendianism within the Algonquins of Ontario. Here's a preview.
Pretendianism is a hot-button issue. Usually it involves one person of note, a celebrity, a professor, or judge. But what if I tell you the Algonquins in Ontario may have thousands of non-Algonquins within their midst? A population explosion made possible because of a land claim. Almost unbelievable, right? Well, that's why APTN Investigates is here, traveling the highways and byways on Algonquin traditional lands in what is now called Ontario.
In 200 meters, you will arrive at your destination.
So this is what I wrote for you, Rob.
Dr. Lynn Gale, an author, activist, Algonquin, battled the feds for her birthright and now sees her community being torn apart from the inside.
Ontario calls this process nation to nation and reconciliation when it really is genocide, right? So the provincial federal order has been imposed on us and divides us. That's an act of genocide. Parliament Hill squats on our territory. That's an act of genocide. Canada and Ontario and Quebec have a long history of denying the Algonquin people who we are and our land and our resources. That's genocide.
You can catch the rest of APTN Investigates Identity Check tomorrow night following the APTN National News. We'll also speak with Rob here tomorrow night on the news about his latest investigation. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, head on over to our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Stick around. The season finale of Nation to Nation is up next. We'll see you back here tomorrow.